You know, back when I was in the academy, we would follow every toast with a song.
Okay. Good morning. Today is the 4th of February, Monday. I'm excited about today because today, besides the fact that my company has acquired another company and we are actually going to be dealing with all the operational fallout that ensues from that, but today is the day I want to talk about my very favorite episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now I know what you're thinking to yourself. Jordan? You? A Trekkie? We all know that the static coefficient of friction is greater than the kinetic coefficient of friction. I don't believe it. Well, believe it. It's true. I mean, I liked The Next Generation, wasn't crazy about the original series. I never watched DS9 or Voyager. I did watch some of Enterprise, so I don't know where that puts me exactly in the spectrum of Trekkiness to non-Trekkiness. I do recall when I was a young boy and I was very interested in science and the stars, and I had a babysitter who taped reruns of Star Trek and watched them while she was babysitting for us. That's originally when I became interested in Star Trek, and later in high school when I didn't have any friends and Friday nights were spent alone eating, takeout Chinese food, I would be sitting in front of the TV watching Star Trek TNG reruns. And for those of you who are curious, yes, I have listened to the Greatest Generation podcast, and yes, I do find it very funny, although very inappropriate because of their potty mouth. Okay, and so if you asked me what was my favorite episode of the entire series, if you just wanted to see what was the greatest possible thing TNG ever created, some people say the best of both worlds, part 1, part 2, or Chain of Command, right, when Picard, 4 lights, alright. My favorite episode, and actually I think it's a lot of the fandom's favorite episode, is The Inner Light. And why this episode is so good, or why it's so important, I think, is something which I'm gonna have to explain. So you have to give me a little bit of room. Alright, so let's just set the stage for the episode. So, right, the Enterprise is out in the middle of space, studying magnetic fields or whatever, and they hit upon this probe that's ancient.
The probe is composed of parisium and talgonite, a ceramic alloy.
Geordi immediately negs on it.
Not a very sophisticated technology.
But boy, how does that old rickety probe pack a punch, because it shoots a laser beam and bam, Picard is on the floor. And he wakes up and he's in this other world and he's got a wife and he has no idea what's going on. He's feeling kind of weird and he's asking all these questions and nobody knows what he's talking about because he's, unbeknownst to him, he's actually living out the life of this person named Kamen on this planet called Catan, no relation to the settlers, presumably. He's really knocked out on the Enterprise and everyone's trying to wake him up, but he doesn't know that, and he's living life at very fast clip, relative to the amount of time on the Enterprise. And at first he rejects it. He doesn't accept this life really. He secretly hides it. He goes off traveling, into the foothills. He's looking for his starship. He's trying to get back to the Enterprise. But eventually he starts to kind of wise up to the fact that he's not going anywhere. He's in this life. And he has a lovely wife, Elaine, who he's, who's very patient, very kind and generous woman. And he eventually starts to realize, I'm just gonna have to make my life here. And he, slowly warms up to the relationship, and they eventually have children. And you have to understand why this is so critical and so amazing for the character Picard, because throughout the series, it's very painstakingly documented how bad Picard is with children. Right? Every chance they get, they make it very clear that he doesn't like them. He's Mr. Explorer, he travels the stars, he is, incapable of relating to kids because he's the consummate adult, whatever that means. But, even in his relationship with young Wesley Crusher.
Sir, I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but...
Shut up, Wesley!
he, has a very hard time relating to him because Wesley's a boy and Picard, can't relate to kids. And he's thrust into a situation in which he's having children with this wife. And he finds out that he actually loves it. But the catch is that this planet is slowly dying. And the civilization itself is dying. The whole probe, this episode's been out for years. I'm not going to say spoiler alert. The whole point of the probe was to find somebody like him and have him live the life. And over the course of the whole episode, he's playing this flute and he's getting better at it. And at the very end of the episode, Riker comes in. He's like, we found this in the probe, and it's a box containing the flute that his character learned to play. And he plays the flute, against the backdrop of space. And, it's just so powerful. The scene just drops. This episode is my favorite, and it's the fandom's favorite. It's my wife's favorite episode, and I just outed her as a Trekkie too. And the reason I think we all love this is because there's so many beautiful ideas in it. But the one to me that stuck out that I think is the most penetrating of all is this idea of Picard becoming, a different person and realizing that there's an entire part of his life which he just is totally disconnected from. That moment when he shares with his wife the fact that
I always believed that I didn't need children to complete my life. Now I couldn't imagine life without them.
Is so critical because he is demonstrating that he realized that there's an entire part of life that he's just totally left behind. And they really pick up this idea later on in the series in such a great way, because when Picard is finally exploring, a serious relationship with that Commander Darren character, the flute returns, right? He's revisiting that part of his life with her, right? There's a scene where she walks in and he's in the deep V, and whenever he's in a deep V, you know exactly what that means in terms of his relationship status. And he's got the flute there, he's hinting to it, it's clear, you can read the meaning in Patrick Stewart's face. It's just great acting. There's this part of his life which he's totally neglected. The big parallel here obviously is a Rashi in the very beginning of Genesis. You don't know who Rashi is. Rashi is the preeminent biblical commentator on the classic books of the 5 books of Moses, and he brings a medrash. He brings down a statement from the sages. That so perfectly encapsulates this paradigm. When the verse in Genesis 2:7 says, "And Hashem creates man from the dirt of the earth," Rashi over there speaks out, the dirt of the earth? What does that mean, the dirt of the earth? It's the earth. The earth is dirt. What's going on? And he brings 2 different explanations. The first explanation is that man is made from earth from all over the 4 corners of the world, so that wherever he goes, he could be buried there because it's a part of him. Which, okay, let's understand that in a second. And the second explanation is that really he's being made from the earth that's going to be the altar of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, which, first of all, it seems very strange that Rashi is bringing 2 explanations that completely contradict one another. But I think when you think about it more profoundly, what's going on here is Rashi is identifying very fundamentally 2 fundamental drives in humanity. A person's desire to go out and see the world, to do things, to accomplish things. I think that this Rashi is validating that part of ourselves. Jean-Luc Picard is the consummate explorer. He loves to travel the stars, chart the unknown, figure out, just explore the universe, as it were. And that drive is so fundamentally human. That is what being made from the 4 corners of the world is. Anywhere you go, you're going to find a part of you. You're going to find yourself in the world. We're not denying that. We're not rejecting that at all. But the second explanation is coming to be a critique of that, which is, yeah, you can go out into the world, and for sure, there is meaning in that. There's meaning in the journey that you're going to take, in traveling the world, in experiencing life, in starting new business ventures, in creating art, doing all those things. But there's another dimension to your personality, which is one which is finding yourself in your relationship with God and coming to realize the basic program of humanity, having children. There's depth and profundity in that experience, which is so much more critical to your self-discovery and self-expression. And it's so powerful and such a meaningful lesson. And ultimately, Star Trek, of course, is a show by secular humanists, atheists, scientists, personalities. They could never really approach this concept. The very end of the series, right, when, Picard is talking with Q, the surrogate god figure for the series.
We wanted to see if you had the ability to expand your mind and your horizons. And for one brief moment, you did.
When I realized the paradox.
Exactly. For that one fraction of a second, you were open to options you had never considered. That is the exploration that awaits you. Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.
Q, what is it that you're trying to tell me?
And Q's giving him a pat on the back saying, hey, good job, you solved the next level logical puzzle. That's the real journey, right? They get it that searching the stars is not the real journey. They don't know what it is, so for them it's, figuring out the next 8-dimensional Rubik's Cube puzzle. But that's not the truth, right? The real answer is that Picard, the greatest discovery you can make is the discovery that there's a meaningful existence in what most people identify as just the most pedestrian thing in our civilization today. What's missing in Picard's life is this inner dimension of having children, of raising a family, of having some kind of spiritual connection. Of course, the show is never going to get to that point. They could never say what I'm saying. My vision, of course, sounds way too pedestrian, way too cliched. Oh, Jean-Luc Picard, didn't you know? Home is where the heart is. But I think it's obviously the truer idea. It's the more real idea. And I think that's why that episode of The Inner Light resonates with everybody, because they realize that there's something deeper going on in that episode. That Picard is understanding a part of himself which he would have never recognized or gotten to on his own had he not been literally thrust into the shoes of another human being's existence, forced to live a life with a wife, with children, and have that experience of raising a family, of connecting to something, deeper and more profound than any of us, but is so, available to any of us who would want it in our lives. And, in today's civilization today, we've never been more alienated and divorced from this concept. The simple idea of having a family and raising children, is for us something which we have to contemplate and think about. But this is why this episode for me is just absolutely amazing. I'm, so glad that I was able to share it with you guys. And anyway, I'll see you hopefully on the next vlog. Clearly these have not been daily as I had intended. I am filming most days of the week, but it's just, it's very hard. And I'm, still trying to do whatever I can. And if I'm coming up short, well, what else can I do?